Set in the near future, a company named Nexera creates simulant servants called simulants, designed to follow 4 key rules. They can't harm humans, they can't change themselves, they must obey the law, and they must listen to their owner's commands. The newest simulants look just like humans, sparking concerns that they might gain independence and blend too deeply into society. Evan and Faye, a married couple, live happily with a simulant who handles their household chores, giving Faye more time for her art and Evan for his piano sessions. However, everything changes after they encounter a serious car crash that sends their vehicle over a cliff. Since then, Evan has been haunted by nightmares and struggles with his memories of what happened after the accident. Tension builds between him and Faye, especially as she refuses to let him enter a certain room. Evan also loses his ability to play the piano, and whenever he tries to talk about the accident, Faye avoids the subject. Meanwhile, Detective Kesler is investigating a rogue simulant named Esme, who has been missing for 3 years. A tip leads him to an apartment where he confronts Esme, trying to capture her with a blocking collar. Esme, however, violently attacks Kesler and escapes. Kesler chases her through the streets, eventually cornering her and managing to place the collar on her. Later, Kesler returns to Esme's apartment, where he learns from the landlord that she was a quiet and private person. Searching her place, Kesler finds items that seem out of place for a simulant, like a diary, a fish tank, and a sketchbook. These discoveries leave him with more questions about Esme's true nature. A man named Casey enters the apartment with his dog, claiming to be a close friend of Esme, unaware that she is a simulant. After Casey leaves, Kesler closely examines Esme's sketchbook and takes a specific page with him. At AICE, Kesler faces disciplinary action for using the electromagnetic pulse gun outside of an emergency. He defends his decision, arguing that Esme's disobedience and strange awareness warranted the extreme measure. His superiors remain skeptical, but Kesler feels certain that Esme is different from other simulants. Kesler then meets with technician Inji, who reveals that Esme's systems have been hacked, removing her restrictions and granting her full autonomy. Worse still, Kesler discovers disturbing memory files showing Esme and Casey in intimate situations, with Casey teaching her how to care for a pet and keep a diary. Kesler connects these details with the sketches in Esme's book, confirming that the drawings are of Casey. Kesler later tries to find Casey, but when he arrives at his apartment, Casey has already moved out. Frustrated, he searches the Nexer database for any information on Casey, only to find nothing. It's as if Casey doesn't exist at all. Kesler notices a strange panel on the wall and finds an old book hidden behind it. Later, he drives to an antique bookstore. The clerk doesn't recognize the name Casey, but when Kesler shows him a sketch by Esme, the clerk identifies him as someone named Desmond. Just then, Casey walks into the store. Upon seeing Kesler, he immediately runs off and escapes in a van, unaware that security cameras captured the whole event. The following morning, Faye spends time in a hidden room, using a VR headset to revisit memories from her past. While revisiting the pool, Evan tries to join her and get close, but Faye stops him. She finally decides to confess something and takes Evan to a mirror. There, she reveals a hidden panel in his chest, exposing the truth. The real Evan fell into a coma and died in the car crash. Faye had activated a simulant copy of him, just as she has one herself. Faye then shows Evan the Forbidden Room, where her own simulant is resting, and Evan's pod remains empty. She explains that the VR system records their memories and transfers them to the simulants, but Evan can't recall the accident because Faye had erased it. Though Evan has many questions, Faye shuts him down as Casey arrives, pretending to be a technician. He checks Evan's vitals, confirming that even though Evan was once in a coma, his simulant body is functioning well. Faye becomes uncomfortable, suspecting that part of the real Evan's soul might have transferred into the sim. She wants to deactivate him for a while, but Casey disagrees, warning that it could damage memory. He suggests that Faye take Evan to a residence he knows, where simulants can stay without their human counterparts, which is illegal. Kesler visits Nexera to speak with Higashi, the CEO preparing to launch the newest simulant model. While Higashi doesn't recognize the name Casey, she confirms that Desmond used to work as one of their engineers. Desmond was the mastermind behind the AI of the latest model, but eventually, he resigned, turning down all of Higashi's offers, no matter how much money was offered. Desmond believed there was a troubling parallel between the level of consciousness they were building into the new models and the idea of creating sentient slaves. Higashi also reveals that Desmond had wanted to tighten restrictions on the simulants to prevent them from becoming too human, which confuses Kesler, since Desmond seemed to have supported the opposite with Esme. Later that evening, Faye finds herself crying over small reminders of their past life, like her husband's old clothes and the piano. In the end, she removes her wedding ring. The following day, Faye takes Evan to a place Casey recommended, a facility run by simulants. She arranges for Evan to stay there for a month and pays. Although Evan doesn't want to part from her, Faye reassures him that she'll visit soon and apologizes before leaving. Moments later, Casey knocks on Evan's door. He introduces himself as a neighbor and pushes his way inside. Though Evan doesn't recognize him, Casey reveals he knows Evan is a simulant. He explains that Faye had planned to shut Evan down, but he intervened, which leaves Evan upset. Nevertheless, Casey offers to help Evan win Faye back and suggests he come to him when ready. Later that afternoon, Faye meets with Joshua, a curator at an art gallery, to discuss organizing a new exhibition for her artwork. Afterward, Faye sends her simulant with some things for Evan. Meanwhile, Kesler checks security footage of Casey's van and notices the license plate isn't registered. The next morning, at AICE, Kesler reviews Esme's memories and sees that Casey had given her a necklace. He interrogates Esme again, but she claims she doesn't know Casey's real identity. Kesler doesn't trust her and starts reading from her diary, where Esme had written about her love affair with Casey. Although Esme admits she loves Casey, she insists she isn't hiding anything, noting that her programming prevents her from lying. Kesler threatens to erase her memories, but Esme, visibly upset, grabs her diary and walks away. Meanwhile, Evan visits the site of his past accident, making a significant decision. He then seeks out Casey for help. Casey explains that he can remove the programming restrictions, making Evan more human. Evan agrees to undergo the procedure, allowing Casey to shut him down for a few hours while he works on hacking into Evan's core. During the process, Casey listens to the couple's memories, which include how they decided to get simulants for themselves. When Evan wakes up, he finds that he can speak freely, no longer restricted. Casey then helps him enhance his understanding of the world, giving him books to expand his knowledge and taking him to a club to experience enjoyment. Meanwhile, as Casey and Evan travel in a van, Kesler's team tracks the license plate and locates them. The system also notifies Kesler that Evan belongs to Faye. He leaves her a message, asking her to contact him. Casey meets with this other version of Esme, and they discuss their plan. They agree to speed up their timeline and meet later at a nearby parking lot. Kesler notices the blonde version of Esme. A few hours later, Casey and the blonde Esme kidnap a scientist, tying him up and forcing him to give them his password and key. They use these to access the Nexera system. Casey uploads a software patch, ensuring it will be completed in 3 days, just in time for a new model release. He then asks Esme to keep an eye on the scientist while he prepares additional safe houses. However, Kesler had sent a drone to follow them, and soon AICE agents raid the location. The blonde Esme tries to escape by jumping across rooftops, but Kesler shoots her, causing her to fall. The agents soon discover they can't crack her encryption, but they can reinstall the 4 rules. Kesler shows the other Esme that her counterpart has been captured, but the blonde Esme insists that the brunette Esme's true purpose is to love and be free. When Kesler presses her for more information, it triggers the blonde Esme's self-destruct sequence, which was implanted by Casey as a safeguard. Kesler's superior orders him to find Casey and extract information from Esme, or else she will be wiped. Kesler goes to see Esme, bringing her a fish to gain her trust. The next day, Faye visits Evan and is shocked to see that he has gathered items of his own choosing and has even been walking the neighbor's dog. Faye is furious when she learns that Casey has been bringing people over. She warns Evan that AICE is aware of him, and he needs to stay low to avoid being wiped. Ignoring her advice, Evan shows Faye that he can play the piano again, which convinces her to become intimate with him. However, during the moment, Faye stops, feeling uncomfortable because Evan isn't really her husband. She leaves, confused and unsettled. Later that evening, Faye attends her art show, which is a huge success, but she is feeling weird. Joshua offers to stay with her, but as they notice Evan standing outside with flowers, Faye quickly sends him away. Evan enters and insists on taking her back, but Faye tells him she made a mistake. This enrages Evan, and he smashes a picture frame in frustration. Faye, frightened, orders him to shut down, but Evan simply walks away. The next day, Kesler and Ing review Esme's memories for clues and receive a call from Faye, who provides them with the address of the residence. They rush out to conduct another raid, while Esme uses a phone left behind to contact Casey. In response, Casey gathers his dog and asks Evan for help, prompting Evan to mention a family cottage. They quickly escape through the emergency stairs just ahead of the AICE agents. In the parking lot, Evan hesitates to leave Faye behind, but Casey reminds him that he isn't really her husband. He's something more. After their failed mission, Kesler returns to AICE and confronts Esme for tipping off Casey. Esme insists it was done out of love, but Kesler feels betrayed and orders her memory wiped. As her memories are erased, Esme screams in agony, and Kesler holds her hand, reflecting on the process as if she were a human dying. Despite this, he repeatedly tells himself that she is just a machine, repeating zeros and ones. Kesler then contacts Faye, asking where Evan might have gone, and she tells him about the cottage. Later that evening, Casey and Evan arrive at the cottage, where Casey finally reveals that in a few hours, his software will release all simulants from their 4-rule restrictions. Meanwhile, Ing accesses Nexera files and discovers Casey's plan, notifying Kesler about it. With only an hour left before the release, Kesler arrives at the cottage and immediately confronts them, pulling out a gun. A struggle ensues when Casey and Evan approach him. In the chaos, Kesler is accidentally shot and is wounded, but Casey reveals he's also a simulant, as oil leaks from his body. Casey tries to help Kesler with his injury, but Kesler refuses, wanting to continue the fight. Evan intervenes, throwing Kesler into the snow. Terrified, Kesler flees, and Casey tells Evan to let him go, returning to the house. Evan grabs the gun and follows Kesler into an abandoned barn, where he finds Kesler slowly bleeding out. Evan delivers a passionate speech about souls, but Kesler, still skeptical, tries to flee once more. However, as soon as he steps outside, he collapses in the snow and dies. Evan returns to the cottage and watches alongside Casey as the software begins releasing stimulants worldwide. Evan wants to help Casey, but Casey reassures him that it's okay, as his human counterpart will soon come to check on him. He also reveals that this was all part of his creator's plan from the start. As Evan leaves, he encounters an older version of Casey, the real Desmond, arriving at the cottage. Desmond enters and informs Casey that love has prevailed, allowing him to die peacefully. Later, Evan surprises Faye at the pool. Still unwilling to accept him back, Faye rejects him, which enrages Evan. In a fit of fury, he pushes her underwater and drowns her. He then heads to the Forbidden Room, where he awakens the simulant of Faye to begin a new life with her. Sometime after, Esme is sold at a black market auction. The buyer takes her to a van, where she meets Desmond, who is waiting with his dog. Desmond gives her an old necklace and leads her away, offering her a chance at a fresh start. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.